Hello, everybody. Hi, Charlene. Hi, Mia. Hi, Go For It Painting. Diplanderden, good to see you. Scatter Terrain and one Saitin who came over from the Discourse section to watch your stream. Hope you're all doing great. So, our guest today is Discourse from Discourse Mini and Dungeons and Discourse. Sorry about that. I swear I know how to speak. How are you doing
It's
this
my own
evening?
fault. It's my own fault. I picked a very awkward name for the channel. I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Thanks. How about yourself?
Yeah, pretty good, thanks. Yeah,
Awesome.
I kept mixing up Discourse and Discourse while I was setting up the streams and stuff, so it just had to go back over and correct it a few times.
I see. I wasn't smart. I didn't do like Karl makes stuff. That makes sense. That's a
Yeah.
sensible name for a channel. Your name's Karl. You make stuff. Boom. I'm like Dungeons and Disco. I don't know what the hell that means.
So actually, I think that's a good question to start from. Where did the name Discourse come from?
It's just one of them. It's just one of them words I've always liked. I decided just to name the channel Discourse because I knew I was going to be talking about. Well, at the time, the first channel I made was Discourse Miniatures, and that was because I knew the channel was going to be all about miniatures. I mean, it's kind of one of those things where with a YouTube channel, you sort of the name of it doesn't matter. On the one hand, there's like so many channels I watch where I don't even know what the name of the channel is, and like it's probably completely irrelevant to what the actual channel's about because so many channels evolve and change. But it also kind of limits you in a little, in a way as well. Like if you were to call yourself like Discourse Wargaming, you're kind of locked in to being like a wargaming channel. So knowing that information, I immediately locked myself into miniatures and and talking about them. That's it. I think
Okay.
I based it on just the word discourse comes from some different like theorists and stuff that I studied at university.
So if we go back before your YouTubing days, you've been in gaming, both role playing and wargaming for a while, yeah. So how did you get started?
Oh, oh yeah. I've been into like collecting little miniatures for like a really long time now at this stage, unfortunately. I first got into it was Warhammer. It was when it was the kind of the first big like main hobby game that I got into. Like a lot of people back in, I think it's got to be about 2005, 2004 now at this stage, considering because it was Dawn of War, the video game, the RTS game
Oh
Dawn of
yeah, I
War that
remember
got
this one.
me into yeah, it got me into wargaming. So I'd known about Warhammer for a really long time because there was a Games Workshop store in the city center where I grew up in, and so I'd always be walking past the little miniature store, But I didn't get the kind of push I needed to actually check out the actual miniatures and the game until after I played Dawn of War and kind of fell in love with the setting. So yeah.
Okay, and you've been collecting. I know that you mentioned Sisters of Battle Army at one point. I know that you're still painting the Black Templars, I think.
Well, yeah. So it's one of the things where I've been playing Warhammer for like 20 years. So at that stage, you sort of run out of armies to collect. I collect Dark Eldar. I collect Sisters of Battle, Imperial Guard. I do
Imperial
collect
Guard, of
Space
course.
Marines. Yeah, Space Marines though I collect under sufferance, right? Like I kind of lost the channel a bet pretty publicly on the channel, so therefore I had to collect the Space Marine army. But it was really good for me to know that because I'd never collected a Space Marine army before. I'd never actually bought real Space Marines, and that feels like one of those like so many people in Warhammer collect Space Marines specifically, like they're Space Marine fans. And so it felt like it was a massive gap in my knowledge of like, the different Space Marine kits and things, because I just never had a huge amount of interest in them. But yeah, like funnily enough, actually, Space Marines were going to be the first army that I collected back in like 2004, because I played the original Dawn of War, and that came with Space Marines, Chaos, Orcs, and Eldar. And out of
Yeah,
those
yeah.
four, Space Marines appealed to me the most. But then I found out about the Imperial Guard, and I always loved the little guy trying to punch up. And that's how the Imperial Guard felt, right? Like in Warhammer, the scale of the setting is so crazy, and then you've just got this random little dude. So Imperial Guard were my first love, at least in terms of actual armies. I always wanted an Inquisitor force, but Sisters of Battle were metal at the time, so it was just impossible.
Yeah, that would have cost a fair bit.
Oh yeah, and they weren't fun to work with either. The old metal miniatures,
Mhm.
they weren't fun to work with at all. I didn't enjoy working with those ones. So it was a real dream whenever the kind of hard plastic versions of the sisters came out there a couple of years back, and that's when I started really properly collecting them again.
What was the issue with the metal ones? Because way back when I started, it was metal or bust. So
Oh
we kind
yeah,
of learned to, live with them.
you have to work with super glue. It doesn't smell as nice as plastic glue, and also gets your fingers stuck together. And there's not a lot of like posing or customization you can do with it. Like in 2004, it was sort of at that stage. I think it was still something that happened, but it was quite unusual to be working with an entirely metal miniature range in Warhammer, and that was what sisters were. Just the kits were very old, and I was just getting into the hobby, so everything was super new to me. So I was still trying to figure out how to clip things off of sprues, and then I was having to work with metal minis, and I just didn't find it fun at all. I didn't find it fun to work with them and paint them, and the paint would chip and stuff because I wasn't taking very good care of them.
Yeah, I guess the learning curve is something like, woo. Okay, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you also mentioned that you started role playing pretty early on as well, or was?
Yeah. So like RPGs, I have a pretty long and storied relationship with RPGs that I think is quite unusual for a lot of RPG people. So while my introduction to wargaming I think was very standard for like someone in the UK, right? Got into Warhammer, hey, it's pretty usual. With RPGs, I actually got into role playing through Warhammer.
Okay,
So I got into it with the game Dark Heresy. This was the old Warhammer 40k role playing game. And
I
that was the first
think I
RPG
missed
I
that one.
ever
Yeah.
played. Oh man, you missed out. It's kind of basic role playing system with D100, but it's set in 40k, and you're playing inquisitorial agents trying to root out corruption and
Ooh,
things like that.
all right.
And so that was my introduction to role playing games. So I didn't play Dungeons and Dragons. Basically, most people get into it, they start playing Dungeons and Dragons or like a fantasy game. For me, that wasn't my introduction. I didn't play Dungeons and Dragons until way, way, way later on, and as a result, Dungeons and Dragons always felt a little bit weird to me in some of its core systems. Like rolling a single D20 always felt odd to me. I like to roll D100. That's kind of my core. It's kind of what I'm into. Yeah. So I got into Dark Heresy, and then I just tried loads of different games, between Warhammer Fantasy, Call of Cthulhu, Delta Green, World of Darkness, just all sorts of different games. And then I finally played D&D, and I was like, oh, huh, this is weird. You level up and there's classes. That's peculiar. That's a bit odd. Uh,
Yeah, I can see why you'd find it weird after something freeform
yeah.
like Call of Cthulhu and stuff like that.
Well, this is the thing, right? Like Dungeons and Dragons, it's such a specific style of game. It's a very combat-oriented dungeon
Oh,
crawl
for sure. Yeah.
game. It feels a lot like a video game to me. And so it felt really weird because I was going from all these other games that felt a lot more role play heavy and then going into Dungeons and Dragons. And so therefore, it's always kind of astounded me that Dungeons and Dragons is like the big RPG because it feels like such a niche experience. I would have thought that, like Pendragon or like GURPS or something would have been something that most people would have drifted towards. But,
Yeah,
hey.
I guess it says a lot about being the first to market.
Exactly. It's not about timing the market, it's about time in the market, right?
So, mostly on your channel, you talk about the the bad behavior of corporations. Let's put it that way. So, was that something that you planned to do initially, or was that something that you ended up in, or how did that happen?
I had no plan. I had no plan at all. So
All right,
the channel itself, with Discourse Minis, my original plan was just to cover a game called the Batman miniature game. Because
that's
I
specific. All
yeah,
right.
it's that specific. So I fell in love with the Batman miniature game. I got really into it for a while, and so I decided it was during COVID, and I was kind of at home working from home all day, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna try a little YouTube channel because I always wanted to do a YouTube channel. I just did Batman content, and it didn't have a big audience because it's such a niche game. But then I just covered games at Games Workshop. There was some drama, some scandal in the community at the time, and I did a video essentially covering it and explaining what the issue was and why people were having a problem with Games Workshop in this specific instance. And the video did way better than any of my other videos had ever performed before. Like really well, like 35K views or something. Whereas I was used to getting like a couple hundred views. So at that stage,
sorry, do you remember what that particular scandal was at the time? Because
there's been so many.
Yeah, I know. It doesn't really narrow it down very much.
I can't remember. I think it might have been fan animations, or it could have been the NDA at the time, but that might come later. Right. There was it was a heady time back then. Oh, in the olden days, yeah. So everything was moving so fast. But yeah, so I covered that. I think it might have been the fan animation issue and the birth of Warhammer Plus might have been the issue.
Yeah.
And it was basically a little bit of an explainer. And the video did really well. So I realized that there was actually that it's kind of one of those things where whenever you have information and you thought that everybody else knew the same things that you do, right? We've all got our own little parochial perspective on the world where we're viewing it through our own eyes, and we think everyone's privy to the same information that we are. And that's not the case. And I realized that actually there is stuff that I believed and that I have opinions on and things that I have experience with, that not everybody shared those same experiences or opinions. And so I could actually make content covering those and explaining things that were going on in kind of like wargaming. And then obviously later on with RPGs, with my RPG channel. And there was actually interest in some of that information. So that's how the channel kind of moved from just being about Batman all into being about wargaming generally. And when you're saying wargaming generally, what you really mean is Games Workshop and Warhammer, because they have managed to absolutely bifurcate the hobby in such a way that there is Warhammer and there is miniature wargaming, and Warhammer is like 99 of the hobby.
I'm sorry, I'm losing your sound there for a sec.
Did you lose me? Am I still? Is it still?
No, can you hear me now? I can hear you now.
Okay, cool. But yes, so essentially covering the wider hobby, which mostly consists of Games Workshop.
Yeah, they did create this kind of walled garden that people seem to be reluctant to move out of.
Of course they did, right? Because they saw a way to make a lot of money, and so they went for it. Because they have one interest, which is to make as much money as humanly possible. Well, no, sorry, as much money as inhumanly possible.
Yeah, again, because it's a corporation and stuff. I had Thomas Perinen on the stream a few months ago, and he mentioned that Games Workshop didn't have a marketing department till the mid-2000s, I think. That really blew my mind. It's like, how things change.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I believe it. I mean, like, I don't want to offend anybody, but Games Workshop are an incredibly incompetent business. Like, they I mean, it's just as somebody who has been sort of aware of their work for a long time, they have a very myopic perspective on things, and they think very small. Even today, they're making millions, billions, right? Like, they're making so much money, and they still are reluctant to expand the business in any way or to scale up. They don't know what to do with themselves. Well, just a very small thinking company.
I do get the impression with some of the decisions they make, because they can't really be explained in any other way.
No, I mean, like, it's like watching a bunch of aliens, like be like, oh, what's this? What's going on? Okay. It's bizarre.
In the meantime, hi Lazy Mini Painting, hi Dungeon Matron, good to see you. And BGD says, welcome Discourse from Western Washington, USA.
Oh, cool. Oh, that's lovely. I love Americans. I absolutely love, I love Americans. I have always wanted to visit the country.
And Scatter Terrain is saying, wow, I didn't realize I've been watching you since the first scandal you covered.
Hey, there you go. Actually, no, that's not fair, because the very first scandal I covered was the entire Night Models. The company Night Models, that was the first scandal I ever covered. Holy hell. But thank you. I appreciate that. If you have been watching me since then, I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. Awesome.
Okay, and also Scatter Terrain is saying, it's ironic for a company that has a game set 40,000 years in the future. Yeah, it is.
I mean, like, I'm not being, I'm not wishing anyone harm or anything, you know. And in a lot of ways, sometimes it's nice that Games Workshop don't have the same sort of designs that maybe a company like Hasbro Wizards have, right?
Oh, that's
But
an entirely different bag
yeah,
of worms,
with
can of worms. Yeah.
with with Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast, it feels like there's more maliciousness behind some of the decisions. Whereas
No
with Games
kidding.
Workshop, sometimes it's just, I think half the time they just don't know what they're doing. You know, it's like one hand is not washing the other, right?
Yeah, but I mean, you've often mentioned, I believe, that you actually want Games Workshop to do well because they've got a great IP, so it would be great if they can do better. But with Hasbro, has been like this whole year, this all of 2023 has been one shit show after the other. It's like, I mean,
Yeah,
look, the pink curtains was the cherry on the cake.
yeah. No, it's been a. I find Warhammer incredibly Warhammer and 40K and Games Workshop. I find them incredibly disappointing because they had this opportunity to really expand the wargaming hobby and they never took it. Right, they decided they've got this very specific business model that is very short-term oriented, and it's going to burn out enough people eventually. And it just really sucks to watch it because it is something that I really like. I really actually enjoy wargaming, and I have a very emotional attachment to Warhammer specifically because it was the very first game that I ever got into in terms of wargaming. And so it's always very sad to see it sort of languished. But I mean, there is an upside to all this, which is that the war game hobby has definitely expanded
Oh,
in
yeah.
like the last 10 years. There's been more war games coming out than I dreamed possible, and it seems like every genre now is getting filled up, and we're seeing more games that are doing more interesting things than just battles, you know, fighting over objective markers. You've got all sorts of games. Just yesterday I was playing a game called 0200 Hours, which is like a commandos game where one player
Ooh.
is playing a bunch of commandos trying to sneak in to a base, and the other player is like has got patrol routes and has built up a little base and stuff, and it's just really cool, you know. And it's just those types of experiences were so rare like 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, especially I'm really fond of asymmetric war games.
I love asymmetry is my favorite thing in the world, and it really sucks that it's really hard to get it right. It's really hard to get asymmetry correct, but when it is gotten correct, it is so much fun. I think this is one of the reasons why I really love role playing, because my favorite thing with role playing sometimes is to actually just play as like the dungeon master, right? Is to play the person kind of building the map and setting up the opponents and the obstacles and then seeing what the players can do. Even when I was younger, I used to love playing with the Warcraft 3 map editor, the
Okay.
map editor, because I used to love creating like maps and things like that, and I think that's really translated into my tabletop experiences as well.
Nice. So I see Bill making stuff joined us. Hi, Bill. We're not related, by the way.
But Bill making stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Was Karl making stuff and Bill making stuff?
Yeah,
Wow, you guys, is
not
this a
related.
franchise or?
Okay, and a question from Dungeon Matron. Are the rumors that Disney may buy Wizard of the Coast valid?
I mean, probably not, honestly. I don't think so. Not anytime soon. And the thing with Disney is that Disney like are buying everything. They're basically trying to buy all of culture. And they will, if they're allowed to, they will purchase all of culture. And I don't look forward to that world. But I don't know. I don't know if there's. I haven't heard any rumors that they're buying Wizards of the Coast anytime soon. I know that Hasbro, as a company, is leaning increasingly on Wizards of the Coast because Wizards of the Coast seem to be the only profitable part of their business. So I would suspect that Disney would be buying Hasbro before they'd be buying just Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah, I think either way, I think we're going to see a lot more fireworks before that happens.
Well, we'll see. I mean, to be honest, there'll be nothing to buy soon enough with AI, right? We're all going to be out of a job anyway, so nothing's getting made in the future.
Yeah, it's going to be a strange thing.
Yeah. Just be a bot farm somewhere. That'll be all of the movies and video games and tabletop games in the future. Will just be some server farm, just pumping it out. Oh, I recognize that reference. Nostalgia, over and over again. Awesome.
Yeah, that's another thing that's been going crazy over the last year on this whole AI thing. Have you?
AI is crazy, man. Like it's wild. It feels like every other video now that I'm putting out, at least on my RPG channel, is about AI. It's kind of wild. So I've been like really skeptical of AI for the longest. I didn't think it was like a big deal. It's kind of like, oh, it's a random word generator, right? It's just like a predictive text. It just predicts the next word after the other. But it really does seem to have a lot of legs. It ain't no NFTs.
Oh no, I think it's here to stay and it's going to get bigger. But I'm not entirely sure I like the direction it's going in.
Oh,
Putting it very mildly.
It's the death of the middle class. It's the
Pretty much,
death
yeah.
of the professional class. Yeah. So it's kind of funny. The AI, I suspect, is replacing all creative industries, right? It's replacing like finance. It's replacing like all those jobs that you thought people would go into when the robots were doing all the manual labor.
Exactly.
Whereas
Yeah,
I
yeah.
suspect that in the future, it's going to be humans are going to be building things, like physically building things and working in manual labor, and then all the robots are going to be creating all the books and all the poems
All the
and all the art
entertainment, all
that we'll be
the
watching.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's going to be a hellscape. It's going to be a
Yeah.
hellscape.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's one that science fiction writers never even imagined.
Yeah, I hope I'm being cynical. By the way, I hope I'm being overly cynical. I hope it's not like that. I suspect that. I mean, there is a solution to AI, and it's called government legislation. I think, but whether or not we'll actually see that, I'm doubtful.
I don't know. Again,
Mm.
probably not anytime soon. I mean, and probably the first few iterations of that will be very weird because
Mm.
governments are not very good at understanding things usually.
Uh-huh. Well, they're very behind a lot of the times.
Yeah.
They're always very behind. But I mean, like, to be honest, when it comes to AI, I feel behind. I feel like I'm behind it. It's moving so fast these days.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
it's stuff that's moving along like day by day almost. It's not even a month by month kind of thing anyway.
Oh, definitely. I mean, like, my next video coming out, it's gonna be is covering AI again.
Ooh, okay.
It's just I don't know if you saw the Terraforming Mars Kickstarter recently. Is
No,
like
no.
so it's like a board game, and they're using AI art. They're just going for it, and they're the first real company I think to like break ranks and go all in on AI. And it's really interesting because I think it's a little bit of a watershed moment. Really, I suspect we're going to see it increasingly. This is just the beginning. More and more games just going all in on AI. I mean, and they were interviewed recently with I think it might have been Polygon, and they said that AI was used to actually generate the game as well. And this is a game that's made like $1.5 million on Kickstarter.
Okay.
So like I mean, we're there, we're like there. It just seems to have happened so quickly.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's like been a year at most is the first, real AI art stuff starts coming out. 2 years maybe. So yeah, things are
Yeah,
moving
I mean,
fast.
they are. I mean, I feel like I'm in a Verhoeven movie right now. I'm like, AI's coming, people. It's coming.
It's all over us.
Like I feel like I'm in the middle of a sci-fi flick. It's so bizarre. I don't know what happens. We'll see what happens. At least there'll be plenty of fodder for videos for me, at least. The destruction of the West. I'll make a good YouTube video.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it will. Going back to your Warhammer videos, did I understand correctly that you often get a lot of pushbacks about those?
Yeah. So people don't like the fact that I cover I cover Warhammer extensively, and I cover it in a way that I give my earnest, honest opinion on Warhammer as someone who's a little bit of a fan of the game, but not so much of the game, which is kind of a little bit awkward. So it's one of those situations where I think that in popular internet culture generally, there is definitely a style of content that consists of just what people would call like overly negative content, right? And this is typically over what I would say are pretty frivolous, unimportant things, kind of issues that I personally don't see as problems. So I think that I often get lumped in amongst these kind of like outrage merchants. However, I like to think that that the content that I create is a little bit more sophisticated than that. Now, I definitely do emphasize certain elements of what my opinions are in the titles of my videos, and that definitely gets me a lot of criticism. But unfortunately, it's just the game of YouTube is that you just have to have a headline.
Yeah,
And
unless
so
you
I
have
like
that,
to make the
no one is going to click the
yeah,
video unless you've got a hook on
yeah.
there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you need a hook, right? And so my hook is here is the strongest part of my opinion. It tends to be anyway. I'm kind of always changing, always trying to figure out what works best. But in terms of the actual content, I like to think that I'm pretty balanced actually in my coverage of Warhammer. My problem is that I actually just really in my soul deeply disagree with the direction that Games Workshop have taken the franchise and the game, mostly because I'm a big fan of Warhammer, but I'm a bigger fan of wargaming generally. I'm a bigger fan of lots of games. You know, I'm a big fan of Warhammer, but I also love Blood and Plunder. I also love bolt action, right? I love all these different games, and I'd love to be able to do videos in all those different games. The problem is that the moment you do a video that isn't about Warhammer, it absolutely bombs in the
Yeah,
YouTube space.
absolutely. The views just go boom.
Yeah, and that is indicative of a wider phenomenon in the miniature wargaming hobby, which is to say that there is Warhammer and there is mini wargaming. Like I said earlier, 99% of wargaming is Warhammer, and then you got 1% that is that's everything else, every other company ever. And I think that wargaming could be a lot bigger. I think that wargaming could be a lot more popular. I think that I think that local game stores hosting events of games for all sorts of miniature war games would be really awesome to see. I think that's a viable thing that could happen in the future. But that unfortunately, I suspect that miniature wargaming has kind of been strangled in the crib a little bit by Games Workshop and Warhammer, and that's a little bit of a bummer to me. So it's something that I kind of express sometimes. I cover the news with Warhammer, and I'm always trying to find positive things to say about it. I'm always trying to find positive things to say about it because I don't like to always be harking on to the things that are bad. The problem is I can only report the news as it is. So, for example, the new 10th edition of Warhammer 40k came out recently, and I was really excited by it. I was really excited for it, and I produced content that was actually pretty, what you would call positive on the new, because I really liked what they were saying in all their marketing. Games Workshop were promising that the new edition of Warhammer was going to be slim, sexy, sleek, and fun and easy to play, and free as well. Rules would be free, and that was really cool. And then in their most recent release, they just went back on all that. They've introduced all the bloat that everyone hated in 9th. They have started selling the rules again. They've ruined all the apps. I mean, how am I meant to report that?
Yeah.
Except for in a disappointed tone, right?
Yeah, I mean, your last video about the return of the codices and how first they sold the cards and then they sold the codex and then the cards. And I was just listening to it and was like,
so that was a fucking lie, right? Like, so it was just I don't know. So I get really disappointed sometimes, and I do cover Warhammer. But what that means though is that there's a lot of people, I think, who have either only played Warhammer or only interested in Warhammer or have associated the Warhammer brand with an element of their identity. And so whenever I'm criticizing Games Workshop or I'm criticizing the latest iteration of the game or I'm criticizing, you know, some sort of recent release or the prices or NDAs or who knows what, there are certain groups of people out there who take that very personally. They take that as if I'm attacking their character in some way or their identity. And Games Workshop cultivate this. This is a parasocial relationship that Games Workshop cultivate using their marketing, right? Like Games Workshop are very much, hey, we're your buddy, we're your local hobby company. Hello, hi there.
Yeah.
This is a $1 billion corporation, right? Like this is not like your be it down at the pub. This is a big company that is really interested in only one thing: the contents of your pocket. And they make that really clear with their business practices. And so when I point it out, I think it makes people uncomfortable.
yeah, I think it's also when you were talking about Games Workshop targeting whales as a customer practice or people with
Yeah.
how do you put it? It's like
Big spenders, people.
big spenders, people low impulse control, and so on. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
people
Oh,
might start
yes.
feeling attacked because of that, because they
Yes.
think you're calling them that, which is
So yeah, like Games Workshop have always, I think, cultivated an audience of people who are willing to spend as much money as possible, right? And they give people plenty of opportunities to spend that money. And because of the fact that they are targeting certain groups of people who are going to spend lots of money, that means by necessity that they're hitting people who they struggle with their spending, or there is a preponderance of neurodivergence in that community as well. And so, like, those are the types of people who get taken advantage of a lot of times by a lot of the business practices, such as FOMO, for example, which is something I feel a lot of as well. I get hit really bad by FOMO myself. And so, like, those things affect people disproportionately. And that is something that I think Games Workshop don't really care about, because, I mean, to be honest, like, their job is to try and maximize the amount of money. That's the way they see it, right? Like, their perspective of it is they want to maximize the amount of money that comes out of people, and that's just not very nice, right? Like, in terms of like how the sausage is made. You got to remember that a lot of the kind of upper management of Games Workshop, the executive level, they come from like financial backgrounds. Like, they don't come from they're not like people who were, came into the miniature wargaming hobby at the tender age of 12 and kind of grew up amongst it. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
these are people who come from the big five accountancy firms.
yeah, I mean, 30 years ago when they were setting up, yeah, that was what most of the upper ranks of the company was like, but not anymore, not for a long time.
No, it was no, not anymore.
Okay, I have a question here from BGD. Do you think the non-games workshop wargaming minority can be expanded by independent creators producing wargame and skirmish rules that prioritize and support user-originated narrative elements to the game, bridging the gap between wargames and RPGs instead of the centralized, commodified lore that help Games Workshop maintain a dead grip on the industry?
I think it's really hard. I think that's really hard. I'm not gonna ever say never. I will say this much though. Both in RPGs and in war games, there's never been this amount of independent games being created by individuals who are creating extremely accessible products that are really interesting, have really interesting gameplay loops or really interesting mechanics. And one of the biggest problems with them is marketing. It's trying to get it out to people. But that can only go so far. So, for example, I mean, I can show off games on my channel, and those games are still going to struggle if they're not able to kind of grab people's attention. I try to sell a lot of games in terms of not like physically. I don't own a store, but like when I on my channel, I talk about a lot of different games that have impressed me, and I try to sell people on those games, and it is successful, I think. But there's only so many people that like even I can reach out to, right? I think that trying to sell the games to people is really, really difficult. And this is like one of the little psychic issues that I have with Games Workshop, is that there's so many people who would call themselves fans of Warhammer and not fans of wargaming. And that to a lot of people, I think that feels like a very ecumenical matter. It's like, it's so insignificant, right? It's just like, whatever, dude. Like, I have this big issue with like calling yourself a Warhammer hobbyist versus a wargamer hobbyist, right? And I get it. Like, people are like, it doesn't really matter. Don't place language like that. But the problem is that if you consider yourself a Warhammer hobbyist, you're never going to try one of those games, one of those like indie games, because you're only interested in Warhammer. Like, you're just interested in the setting. You just like Space Marines, whereas if you conceive of yourself as a war gamer, you'll be more likely, I suspect, to actually try out other games. Yeah, to try other different games, and maybe even play Warhammer with different miniatures, right? Like, even supporting your different stores and things. And I think that's really important, because we all build our own identities. We construct our own identities. We make them ourselves. And if you're gonna, and I'm always deeply, deeply, deeply suspicious of someone constructing their identity with a brand, right? Yeah, with something a brand has constructed that is monetized and marketable. That's something I'm always very suspicious of. However, you want to call yourself a wargamer, go at it. Like that. If that's your hobby, that's awesome, because that's something that you own. That's not something that a business owns. It's not something that a company owns. You have total ownership over your hobby, and that gives you so much freedom to check out other things. You get locked in these little prisons where you're saying like, I'm a Warhammerist. It's like a big problem. But yeah, sorry, what was the question again? A little bit of a rambler. I apologize. It's why my videos are scripted.
That's fine. I
I
mean,
ramble too much.
don't worry, it was fully coherent. But I did kind of lose it for a second because when you said it's an ecumenical matter, I just had this picture of Father Jack Hackett in my head going, "It's an ecumenical matter."
Yeah, that lives rent free in my head a lot. Yeah.
Okay, but back to BGD's question, I think one of the few games that did that was ironically from by Games Workshop themselves. That was Mordheim. They just left it to the community. They no longer support it, and 25 years on, it's still, sorry, 20 years on, it's still going strong.
It's going strong, but it's not exactly growing. And when it does grow, I would say that it's because of content creators. There's a lot of content creators actually create like the occasional kind of content for Mordheim,
Yeah.
as well as there was a video game I remember, and that also kind of shot up the population a little bit. Mordheim has a big advantage in that it has a very iconic kind of look to it with the cityscape. It's just a very evocative kind of setting.
I'd also say that the low barrier to entry helps because you don't have to collect 500 minis to play a game.
It does, but I don't think that a game that isn't being actively supported by a certain group and bringing out things like miniatures and stuff will really ever be like able to rival, you know, a bigger game that is being actively supported. I like to see games get actively supported just in the right way. With Mordheim, like it's cool. I was so here is you can have the shock and secret, Karl, revealed here first. I've never really been like the biggest fan of Mordheim. I think it's okay. It's kind of my opinion on it. Yeah, I think it's fine. But I think it's old now. I do think it's old, and I think there's a lot more and better skirmish games out these days. I think Mordheim thrived in an environment where most people were playing like Warhammer and Warhammer like army scaled games. You know, these days though, like there's so many skirmish games. Like if you're a fan of Mordheim, I implore you to check out a game called Carnivale. I guarantee you will.
I keep hearing about that, and I keep meaning to have a look at that. I just need to find it.
Yeah. I guarantee you'll have a blast. It's a lot of fun. I like Mordheim, but it's definitely showing its age at this stage. The last like 10 years really have been like there's been a huge burst of skirmish games, massive burst of skirmish games, and really it's quite telling actually because it speaks to again the bifurcation of the hobby. The fact is, skirmish games were something that Games Workshop never really had a huge amount of interest in. Like they had Mordheim, they had Necromunda, and they had Blood Bowl, right? But aside from that, their focus was always Warhammer 40k, and then for a little tiny period of time, Lord of the Rings.
Space Hulk, I guess.
Space Hulk, yeah. Space Hulk's kind of straddling that line between board game and skirmish game, though, I guess. But in the last like 10 years, like skirmish games like blew up, like they really took off, and it feels like Games Workshop were trying to play catch up with their most recent like Kill Team to the indie market, right? To the to like games like Frostgrave, for example, like these games that really blew up and became like massive hits because they're so accessible and so much easier to play than an army game. Like I agree, Mordheim is a lot more accessible than Warhammer, but I would say that a game like Carnivale is probably a lot more accessible than Mordheim. Because you can just you can get access to the kits, right? You can buy a rulebook. You can buy a starter set that comes with like 2 different crews and terrain, and you're done, sorted, and that's it. That's everything you need.
Yeah.
And
plus again, the rules have had 20 years of time to get refined for Carnivale versus Mordheim, which is a product of its time.
Yeah, no, definitely, right. Like Carnivale is just a more recent game. Like it's kind of wild to me. So like in wargaming, I'm all for by the way, people playing older games. I think that's awesome. I mean, like I'm playing Bolt Action a lot, and Bolt Action is like 2010, 2012. Which isn't that old, but you know, Mordheim.
I was going to say because when we were saying that 10 years ago was old, I was like.
But I all that to say, I think that there are definitely games that are really cool and they've been around for a really long time, and I think they're awesome. But like we have to try new games, right? Like there's new stuff coming out all the time with really interesting mechanics, and it's kind of like people talking about like Doom today. Like Doom was a really fun game, but I would like to play some other games.
Yeah, good point. So apart from Carnivale and Bolt Action, are there any other games that you would say, okay, these are games you have to try if you like wargaming?
Oh wow. So
Let's
I'm
say
one of those
top three. Let's say
people.
top three picks. Okay.
That's hard. That's really hard. So I'm one of those people. I go through waves. I go through like I get obsessed with a game for a little while and I get really into it and then I kind of move on to the next game. So that's just my vibe. So recently the games I've been playing a lot of been Relic Blade. I've been playing a lot of that recently. Actually, if you really like more time, maybe try a Relic Blade.
Okay.
Relic Blade's a lot of fun. It's a nice little casual game, very cool. I've been playing 0200 hours, as I said, recently as well. I'm a big fan of the Blackside Studio game, so Don't Look Back is really cool. It's a very different style of game. It's not like a war game. It's a kind of co-op / solo game where there is a killer or like a movie monster of some kind, and you're playing people trying to run away from the monster, right? And it takes place on a board, you know. I've got the little Alien expansion for that game. It's a lot of fun. Been playing a ton of Bolt Action. Been playing a lot of that, specifically Conflict 47, which is the Weird World War version of Bolt Action. It uses the Bolt Action rules, but it's got like like super tanks and zombies and things like that.
Is that the one with the little tank mechs and stuff like that?
Oh yeah, the big mechs and stuff. Yeah, it's awesome. So I don't play Bolt. Whenever I say Bolt Action, I actually mean Conflict 47. I don't play Bolt Action. I've only got a Conflict 47 army, and of course 1-page rules as well. I think for people who are big fans of Warhammer or they're big fans of the Warhammer setting and they're like, I'm not really enjoying the actual game of Warhammer, or they're not having a lot of fun with Warhammer. You're maybe just kind of putting up with it. You're like having a blast, like meeting up with friends, and then you're just kind of like enduring the game. Like the game is just kind of happening. Maybe try 1-page rules because you might find that actually you enjoy it a lot. Like you actually really enjoy the bit of where you roll the dice and stuff.
Yeah, I second that completely. I love that system.
Yeah, 1-page rules is great. It's a very easy system to play, very simple, very accessible. It's not the most deep game in the world, but I would argue it's probably deeper than Warhammer 40K. But it's a lot of fun. It really is a lot of fun. But aside from that, like lots of games, so many. I've been painting some Nazgul recently for Lord of the Rings. And yeah, I'm gonna try another game of Lord of the Rings at some stage. That's a fun old game. Yes, 20 years ago is old. I'm afraid to say.
Is it still the same rule system, or has it been updated for recently?
It's been updated, right? Like it was updated after the Hobbit movies. It's now Battle for Middle Earth or Middle Earth Battles miniature game. I can't even remember what the hell the game's called. It's got a really awkward name. I just call it the Lord of the Rings mini game. But it's the Games Workshop one.
So let's see. Ryan Berry is saying Blackside Studios 2024 roadmap is very exciting. Oh, okay. I think I'll have a look at that.
Blackside Studios are knocking it out of the park, dude. Like Blackside Studios, they're a company I've been following for a really long time. I'm like one of them OG. I'm like a hipster when it comes to Blackside Studios. I'm like, actually, were you there for the launch of Don't Look Back? So I've been following those guys for a really long time, and I really like them. I think they're really cool. I really like their business model. I really like the fact that they are very open about a lot of information. They're very kind of pro-consumer. They're trying to create the best product they possibly can and get it into the hands of many people as possible. The only issue with them is that they're American-based, and everything that they do is like based in America, and that includes like distribution. So one of the problems is trying to get it in Europe, where I am, is really, really hard. It's really tough.
Shipping is something special.
Yeah, so I'd love to see them get a distributor in the UK. Or okay, I guess in Europe, but for me, like selfishly, the UK would do real well.
Okay, and I believe you're being volunteered into a Blood and Plunder binge, I think.
Blood and Plunder is like on my list. It's like so hard on my list. I have a starter set for Blood and Plunder, the big new starter set, and I think I showed it off in a stream once, and I've got a bunch of miniatures built from that. I have 2 ships, one of them halfway painted. Like, I am so ready to play that game, but I just haven't gotten to the stage where I've gotten a game in yet. And I really want to play it. I really want to play. I'll be playing Pirates, of course.
So,
but I really want to check it out. It looks like so much fun. I've read through the rule book, and it seems like a real blast. It really does. Seems like a real blast.
So we've got Dexter from the Plunder then, who is saying, I'm trying to work towards building a Blood and Plunder. Maybe one day we can do something together in the future. That would be very cool.
Yeah, that would be really cool. Although I will say, so I would be totally down for that. But I would say that Blood and Plunder, I think I struggle with it a little bit because I love the history of the thing, and if you're like someone who's interested in pirates or like into like the the Age of Seal or just yeah, historical information at all, the rule book for that game is like filled with really cool information about pirates and the different captains and how the navies worked and stuff. I think it's really interesting, and I love all that. History was one of my favorite subjects at school, but I will say, where's my mermaids? Like where's my kraken? Where's my undead pirates with like cursed pieces of it? I struggle with historical games. I've always struggled with historical games. Like that's why I only ever got into bolt action once I discovered Conflict 47. I love that alt history. I love like adding a little bit of fantasy to the mix with history games, and I think that's one of the reasons why I haven't like jumped all in. If Blood and Plunder was like one side are the British Navy and the other side are undead pirates, I would be like, boom, hell yes, hell yes, I am in there. Oh no, it's a mermaid! Like that would have been so sick. And there's not even like a fan. It feels like such an easy win for Firelock Games to bring out an expansion that's a little bit more ahistorical. But I know those guys love like the you can see the love and attention that has gone into that game
for
to
sure.
get things like historically accurate, and they really are all in on that. You can really tell. But damn, man, I just want a mermaid. I just want to shoot a mermaid.
Well, Dex, you heard the lady. Talk to your people.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Okay, that actually reminds me. Happy belated Talk Like a Pirate Day, everyone. We missed that one, but I forgot about it. And Plastic Predator is saying, I'm also trying to sell Discourse on Malifaux, but no dice equals no fun, apparently.
Oh, Malifaux it's a game that I've had recommended to me a lot. I don't mind card. I don't mind cards as like a system, and I know that like this is kind of one of those like mind and hearts things. Like in my mind, I know that like using a deck of cards as your sort of dispute, as your resolution system, is really cool, and it opens up loads of really strategic kind of moments because you can card count, right? You can see what the odds are of you getting a success or failure based on what you draw from the deck. However, when it comes to war games, I need the clickety clack. I need the dice to roll. I need that noise.
You need
I need to roll it and
the shiny Matchbox.
Exactly. Yeah, like there is something in my like ape brain that kind of like the neurons fire the moment that the sound of the clickety clack on the table rolls. I love it so much, and so I really struggle with games that are primarily kind of like card-based resolution. There was a game from Blackside Studio that I love the vibe of called Yafsiga that also had a card-based resolution system, and I really struggled with the game as a result. Like I could see it was really coherently put together, but I just didn't have as much intrinsic joy, right? I just not as much intrinsic joy. Maybe Malifaux would be different. I want to try Malifaux. Malifaux's like one of those like big pivotal games that I just have not played at all. It's like up there with you got Malifaux, you got Infinity, like those big games that everyone has to try at least once before they die because it's one of the war games with a capital T.
Okay, and what about the role-playing front? Are you set on Call of Cthulhu or? Oh, by the way, forgot to ask. Are you forever DM or do you also play as a player?
I wish I was a forever DM. I would love to be a forever DM. I love DMing games. Unfortunately, I play the group that I'm of my friends who I've been playing like role-playing games with for years since like 2010 or so. Everyone in that group wants to DM. So everybody wants to DM in that game. Okay. Everyone wants to run a game, and so like I never get to run games. I don't get to run games anymore because I don't have time. I can't commit to like running a game anymore because I just like it's so much time and work running the two channels. But so I don't get to run games half as much as I would want to. I was running a D&D game there a couple of years back, and it was a lot of fun. I was running two big massive games. And it was such a joy. And I fortunately had to hang up my DM hat for the channels. So sad. But yeah, wish I was a forever DM. Sadly not. I've got like the opposite problem, I think. that a lot of other. I always hear people out there being like, "Oh, I never get to play. I always have to run the games."
Yeah,
I'm like, dude,
that's not an answer I get very often. It's quite surprising.
yeah. Yeah, like there's people out there like, they're like dying of thirst in the desert being like, "Please, I just want to play." And I'm like drowning in the ocean here being like, "Please, just some fucking sand. That's all I need." I don't know, maybe that analogy worked the other way around better. I don't know.
So oh yeah, and you run your channels full time right now, yeah? That
Oh
like the,
yeah,
all right.
yeah. So I used to do every 4 days. There used to be a video out on Discourse Minis, and then I started doing the Dungeons and Discourse videos as well. And so I went down to a week between. So each channel there'd be a video a week, which meant it was 2 videos a week, and that's a little bit overwhelming. I've had to like slow down the pace a little bit, otherwise I would kind of burn out. And plus, I've been researching a lot more these days. I've been trying to make the videos not like event based, not like you're getting into the big uh into the big stadium to like watch the big movie every week. But I've been trying to spend a lot more time on the writing and improving the videos and making them funnier and just basically trying to like work on the editing and stuff of them
Okay.
and improve the overall content and building videos around content that I think would be of interest to a lot of people. So I've been working on that, which means that the videos kind of have slowed down a little bit, but there's a lot more time and effort kind of going into them. And thankfully I am full-time. There would be no way for me to do this part-time at all.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's like
It's insane. Like the amount of, it's kind of funny. So like I watch a lot of YouTube. I watch a lot of content creators, and they make a lot of them make it look really easy, right? Where you just kind of turn on, oh, it's a new video this week. Oh, cool. I'll just watch that then. But the amount of like time and spent like researching and like writing and editing and stuff in the background, it's just absolutely insane. Even like making the thumbnails and thinking up a title for the video and stuff, like it takes hours and hours and hours. It takes an entire day for me to actually release a video like on the day of release. It's just, so yeah, it's a lot of work, but it's a joy. I really love it. It's absolutely, it's the best job I've ever had. And I have worked a lot of jobs in a lot of different places.
okay.
I've worked a lot of jobs. I've worked on boats. I've worked in customer service. I've worked at, like in large corporations. I've worked on the legal side of things. So, and this one is the best one without a doubt.
Speaking of thumbnails, I remember I think it was last year, year before that, but you had given me some advice on the YouTube Creators Discord about thumbnails and stuff. That was really useful. So thanks for that.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. Thumbnails are like crazy. So there's a lot of people I think that like really struggle. There's a lot of people who just want to make like their videos, and then the thumbnails and titles and stuff are like, they really struggle with those. And I totally get it. Like, so I'm like really interested in that side of YouTube. Like I am actually interested in the kind of like thumbnails and titles and things like that. Like I watch a lot of wargaming content, and I watch a lot of RPG content as well. And I look to see what is working for other channels, because ultimately at the end of the day, I do want my videos to be viewed by the maximum amount of people. Because I think that the information that I have in them is important. Like I believe in my own videos. I believe in the value of my own work. And so it's just like one of those like kind of necessary evils where you've got to sit down and go like, do the thumbnail face or whatever. Although that it's kind of funny because the meta of that has changed. Like there's definitely metas with YouTube. Things like change over time.
Okay.
Whenever I first started, and like no one knows, there's no like rule book to this stuff. Like nobody knows what the hell's gonna work until you do it. But whenever I first started, I was always making these like shocked faces and going like really over the top with the big arrows and stuff. And I've discovered that actually that doesn't work as well as kind of more understated like stuff now these days. I try to be more understated with my thumbnails. But I mean, like hell, I've got no pride. I'll make my thumbnails look as cheesy and silly as possible, and I encourage every creator to do the same, to go all out on making their thumbnails as good as possible. And that's not to say that it will look good; it's just to say that it will work well in the algorithm, because the algorithm is a fickle monster that we all must dedicate our worship to.
Yeah, sure.
Great AI in the sky, yeah.
That reminds me, when we were talking about trends and stuff, I remember you had that thing that was Games Workshop The Land Est that you used to say at the end of every video. So how did that come about, and how did it drop out eventually?
I think it was born out of frustration. I think I was just like really annoyed one day and I said it. I think it was just like a joke, and then I just kept saying it because just after the kind of Roman senator, so he used to always say that Carthage must be destroyed. And so like I would end every single video off of that because it was kind of funny. But the reason why I stopped it was I already struggle to be taken seriously, I think, by a certain segment of the wargaming population who think that I'm just like literally like sharpening a blade, just going like, now I'm gonna kill Games Workshop with this video. And people, I think, suspect that that's like my thought process, and it's not. And as funny as I was finding the idea of like ending every single video of like Games Workshop must be destroyed, to me that's like an over the top joke. It's obviously not like, you know,
it's not
definitely,
it's not really what we were going for. Yeah.
Yeah, it's born out of frustration for sure, but like it's not like I'm being like we must reach out and find Games Workshop and destroy them. But people were taking it kind of personally, and I thought it was kind of undermining some of my more serious videos. We're getting a little bit undermined, and the points were getting undermined by them. So I just stick to the aggravated sexual assault jokes now in videos, and so that way people know that I'm being very serious all the time. You gotta have jokes. You gotta have jokes inserted in your videos, I think. Otherwise things would just be too depressing.
Yeah, I mean, I really like the skits you do with the costumes and stuff. But
the skits. Oh man, OG viewer, right? Yeah. Oh no. So the skits were fun, but what I was discovering was I stopped doing them like a year ago or so because I was constantly like retreading old grind. Like what you'll find with Games Workshop is that when you cover like one scandal, they'll do it again over and over, right? There's only so many times you can be like, oh wow, there's a new Space Marine coming out. And there's only so many times you can do a skit about the fact that there's a new Space Marine coming out, and there's always a new Space Marine coming out. You know, like I found that I was repeating the same jokes. So it was, yeah. And it added a lot of time and effort. Like like an extra like day or two onto each video.
That's basically filming its own mini video every time.
Yeah, exactly. You're like filming its own mini video that requires way more editing and requires like, you know, costumes and things like that. And I found myself, I was making skits just for the sake of making skits because it was like part of the video was to make the skits. And then I wasn't really like super like, they weren't like amazing, you know? So what I prefer to do now is I do make the occasional skit still. Like on the Dungeons and Discourse video, I think I made a skit like last month on one of those videos, but I try to get them a little bit more naturally inserted into the video, and only if I think that the joke's really good. If I think the joke is really good, I'll go for it. Like I'll make the skit then. And also, yeah, that's another thing. I used to put the skits at the very beginning of the video, and it was killing my retention. So people don't notice maybe, but I can see when people are clicking off the video. I can see the charts. I get fed all this information from YouTube. They're like, craft the perfect video, Discourse. Here's all the data. So they give me that data, and I look at it, and I saw that people were dropping out a lot during the skit. Like they were clicking in and then going, ugh, and then jumping out. So I was kind of like, well, that's a bummer. So now whenever I do skits, I tend to like put them kind of in the video, right? And I try not to disrupt the flow. So a lot of my videos are really carefully scripted. I script all my videos. Well, most of them anyway. Occasionally I do a video that's not scripted. I script my videos, and I'm trying to, and there's a real rhythm to the videos. Like I'm not like putting my arguments and positions randomly scattered around. I'm trying to build this kind of argument as I go and lead towards a crescendo at the end. And so sometimes when you throw a skit in there, it's like boom, like you've lost all your momentum, you've lost all the pacing.
Just throwing it off the tracks and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, so it's just the art of editing, right? Like it's trying to figure out like where to put that stuff in sometimes, and it's worth it a lot of the time if the joke is good enough. The joke has to be really good though.
Yeah, you reminded me of someone I heard talking a while ago about the art of presenting or the art of making speeches, like when to throw in a joke, when not to throw in a joke.
Yeah. No, well, the answer is always throw in a joke. I always, if there's a joke, always throw in a joke. I'm actually really sad. So I had to cut a joke from a video the other day, and it made me really sad. I always hate cutting jokes. I love to keep them in, but yeah, sometimes you gotta kill your darlings, right? Get the video shorter. That's like my quest at the moment. I'm trying to keep my videos, trying to get them shorter. Which is funny because it means less money for me. Because the shorter the video, the less like ads I think like that gets shown right by YouTube. So it actually means that the shorter videos make less money, but I want the videos to be shorter because I think that I want to try and get the information to people like ASAP, right? Like I'm trying to get the information to them, and I think the longer videos, people just don't sit through them. So, like so many of my videos where the first half is like I'm like presenting all these arguments that I disagree with, but I'm presenting the arguments. So then in the second half of the video, I can like knock them all down.
But
And
no
then
one
people
gets to the
watch
second half.
first half.
Yeah.
No, so they watch the first half and they're like, "You're an idiot. You're a goddamn idiot, Discourse. Goddamn, how could anyone think this?" And I'm like, "I don't think this. Did you watch the rest? Nope. And I'm never gonna watch another one of your videos. You dumb dumb." But I'm getting better at that part. I'm getting better at it.
So in the meantime, we've got Crypto Kev in the chat saying, I couldn't trust Discourse as a dungeon master.
I wouldn't trust me either, to be honest. I wouldn't trust me either at all. I will say that as a dungeon master, I am hard but fair. I will say I like to make the content challenging. I've always been of the belief that for a dungeon master, the goal is to set up obstacles and then let the players solve them themselves, right? So,
Yeah, pretty much on the same wavelength. It's
yeah.
most of the sessions end up like, but did you die?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So now from BGD, glad to see you start Dungeons and Discourse to cover the RPG hobby. Despite all the legal, economic news and scandals surrounding the major publishers like Hasbro and Critical Role, will you cover more indie games?
In terms of actual review content, I do review games, and I've started to review RPGs, but on my Patreon. So I do that on Patreon. The fact of the matter is, I don't think that there is like a huge audience for a lot of review content for that. So that's why I stick it on Patreon, because it's the sort of thing that I'm interested in. But I also don't think that I'm like the best reviewer in the world. I will be honest. Like I do try to review stuff, but I don't think it's necessarily where my strengths lie. And so part of my job, I think, is to make things that I'm interested in interesting to other people. And so indie games and covering other companies and things like that is definitely a part of it. But I sort of approach my channel as being a very pro-consumer channel, right? I'm trying to be like
100%.
an advocate for consumers. Yeah, because certainly for miniature wargaming, I realized that there was a lot of channels that were covering like how to paint things and like how to do, how to build minis or how to play a game or here's some battle reports. But there was a lot of channels like actually opining on business decisions, like as their goal, as the reason d'etre.
Not many,
And so
I think, not to be honest.
yeah. And the channels that were there, I wasn't the biggest fan of. So I decided that would be a really good space to get into, because I'm a very opinionated person. And then with the RPG stuff, it's kind of the same thing. Although I will say, I think that the RPG marketplace is a lot healthier. I think it's a much more kind of diverse place with a lot more different games, and I don't think that they need as much spotlighting, because there's a lot of creators who are already doing that. Like there's a lot of creators who are already like producing a lot of really great review content for RPGs. But like I would like to talk about more games, but at the end of the day, for my Dungeons and Discourse channel, I'm kind of a news channel, I sort of cover like some stuff that's new and that's happening. And like even my most recent video, it's not out yet, so sneak preview, but it's going to be on Terraforming Mars, which is a board game.
Ooh, okay.
Right. Because I'm sort of expanding the Dungeons and Discourse channel into covering tabletop content, generally speaking. So RPGs and also tabletop stuff. Originally, the channel started as like, here's some DM advice. But like what I quickly realized was there are already channels dedicated to DM advice. There's like 10 years of people giving advice on how to run a Dungeons and Dragons game. Oh, am I cutting out?
Yeah, you are at it. You're blinking in and out of existence. Oh no! You still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. Okay, you're back.
Am I? Hello? Is this thing on?
Wave if you can hear us.
Yeah.
Okay, I think, just one sec. I think the Plunder then just answered. That might be something in the future. I have heard that fantasy is coming. I believe he's talking about Blood and Plunder, but I'm not entirely sure. So you might be getting your mermaids.
If I get my mermaids, I swear to God, there will be a video on my channel if there's mermaids. I'm just saying right now, like that will happen. So I will commit to that. Should not have committed to that. Do not commit. I'm gonna commit to it. I'm gonna commit to it. Okay, you got me. You got me.
Okay, CryptoKev, Karl makes stuff. You've got a new Patreon. Oh, thank you, sir. No, I don't think she was abducted by the Pinkertons.
They haven't come to me yet. So I live in Ireland, so I feel pretty safe from the Pinkertons, especially the area I live in. They're welcome to come, come over. They'll find one union here they can't break. So Jesus, I should not put out public challenges to the Pinkerton group. They might call me on that.
Okay, question from Paint Minutes Live. Question for both. What are your favorite lines to use when pitching the hobby to the masses?
Oh wow, that's like a really hard one. So I mean, you're talking to somebody who still hasn't been able to explain what wargaming is to their extended family. Like I can't.
Same,
I'm like,
yep.
it's like miniatures. You paint them.
You're playing with
play with them.
little toys.
Yeah,
That's as far as I
little
got. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the rise of Dungeons and Dragons and RPGs and nerd culture has like really helped wargaming, you know, and the idea of it. Like, there's this birth of collectibles as well. I like you see them like toys and stuff have like really exploded into pop culture. You know, like you go into HMV these days and it's filled with. Is HMV a global brand or is it just UK? It's like it's a high street brand in the UK, and so you go into one of those and it's like filled with like toys and like collectibles and like nerd things and Magic the Gathering cards, you know. That makes it a lot easier these days to just go, they're like little miniature figures that you paint and you play games with. And typically if you say Warhammer, people get you. But how to sell it, like how to actually sell the joy of it, is kind of a tough one, because I think it's one of those things that needs to be tailored to the audience. For me, I love playing games with like I love playing war games, but I think a lot of more people prefer painting miniatures for like the relaxing side of things, and they kind of like the crafting side of stuff. So I think if I had to like try and sell wargaming, I would just say, did you enjoy playing with toys when you were a kid? Well, you might like this. You might have a bit of fun with it. It's organized play between adults, and sometimes you get to wear a silly hat. The dream. Yay. The dream.
Oh, yeah, Scatter Terrain has a good one. Come for the murder hoboing, stay for to find the voices and dress up.
There you go. That's it. Murder hobos are only a problem if you make it a problem. Murder hobos are exactly the type of player that D&D encourages. Change my mind. Boom. My hot take right there. I'm full of them.
Okay, so how would I don't think I've ever needed to pitch wargaming or role-playing to anyone, because especially recently, like you said, it's people might come to me to ask me how to get started, because they heard of it and they already think it's interesting. The question there becomes different. It's how to get them, how to help them get started without making them crash and burn out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one element I think is a really important part is that there are a lot of different experiences to have with wargaming these days. You know, like you could sell it as do you like strategy? Do you want to play a game where you have to, you know, strategize against your opponent and superior tactics will win? And that's like one way to sell it. But then there's other games where they're a lot more just kind of roll the dice and see what happens. And do you want an exciting kind of like Saturday night where you get to tell a story with your friends, with a crafted table and terrain and this beautiful landscape, you know, that you yourself will have to build? And it's just like there's so many elements to wargaming. I think it's really hard to synthesize it down. I actually think that's been a bit of a problem for wargaming, you know, that we can't agree that what wargaming is. Like, we can't agree on what wargaming is. It's easier just to say Warhammer than it is to say like is it the painting hobby? Is it the miniatures hobby? Is it the war game hobby? Because there's people who just paint, there's people who just collect, there's people who just play, or they do all three. And so it's really hard to like sell like what it is. Like what it is. We're like this loose coalition of people who've got we're like three different hobbies in one.
Okay, I'm just seeing some of the suggestions in the chat, which are pretty amazing. Let's see. Dungeon Maintenance saying, where did it go? Join our friendly game of violence. And Plastic Predators selling Carnival as parkour, but then you shank the Pope.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I think like basically, yeah, that's it. That and you can get drowned. I love that. Any game that has the rules for drowning, I'm a big fan of. And the fact that you can actually take people and drown them in the water. That's fantastic. Fantastic.
I will have to try that one.
Yeah, it is fun. It's very intuitive game as well, especially if you know like the World of Darkness
Yep.
kind of RPGs. Uses a similar D10 system. Roll over
Okay.
7, then you
Yeah,
get a
nice.
success.
And okay, there's a 2-player box set. Oh, that's nice. That's very good. So we've just gone over the hour. So do you have any stuff that's coming up that you would like to share with us, or maybe places that your channels are going?
And check out my so check out my channels, Discourse Minis for wargaming content, and Dungeons and Discourse for RPG content. I think at this stage is the is I don't have anything like special that's coming up necessarily, just the same old kind of content covering the news in tabletop gaming and covering the like most recent war games and things like that. Yeah, so just videos out every week basically.
Okay, so yeah, we'll see who does the next Jackass move, whether it's Games Workshop or Hasbro, I guess.
Oh man, geez. At this stage, it is like a running competition, right? I think the thing is, so for Games Workshop, a lot of their problems are sort of business as usual, right? Like it's they've got this cycle of violence that they keep on returning to, whereas Wizards of the Coast have been like screwing up in really novel ways, like really interesting and weird ways recently, between like having AI art in their books, or hiring Pinkertons to like go around to people's houses, just bizarre activities that really, the OGL scandal was so massive that it just feels like it was kind of like one of those Berenstain Bears moments where you like entered another dimension, right? This Mandela effect thing where we're like, wait, what's happened? We're in like this weird dimension now where Wizard of the Coast have decided to be like as evil as humanly possible. Like a supervillain took over, and now they're like, yes. It's absolutely bizarre. I mean,
was it you who said that, hey, I feel like I've woken up and, sorry, I went to sleep and woke up in a cyberpunk dystopia, or was it someone else? Because I think that was really spot on.
it might have been me. I don't know. I say so much. I say so much stuff. I mean, in fairness, that's why. So the reason why I started my Dungeons and Discourse channel, part of the reason was because of the kind of like I was always planning on covering Wizards of the Coast and things. I didn't want to cover it on the Discourse Minis channel because I figured that there isn't that huge cross section between people who are interested in like miniature wargaming and RPGs. Like there is a bit of a cross section, but I didn't want people to like tune in for RPGs and then get hit with a bunch of like Games Workshop content and kind of like it would hurt like the channel. So I decided to start a second channel, and I started it just as the OGL scandal was like kicking off. I started my channel, I had one video, and then the OGL scandal thing happened. I was like, oh my goodness. So talk about the right place at the wrong time, right?
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think I'm going to let you go and enjoy your evening today. So thank you again so much for joining us. I know you're very busy. It was a pleasure talking to you.
It was a real pleasure. It was lovely to meet you, Karl, the eponymous Karl from Karl Makes Stuff. It was nice to chat in person. So, well, digital person. You know what I mean? Yeah. The video skip. Yeah, exactly. It was a real pleasure. Thanks very much for having me on. I had a lot of fun. It was a real blast.
Yeah, same. And I'm definitely looking forward to your next video. So in the meantime, for everyone else, we'll be streaming again on Sunday with Zombies. And if anyone wants to join later, I believe that Dungeon Maitner is going to have a hangout on her Discord at some point in about an hour or something. So, Discourse, thank you again for joining us, and have a great evening. And thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. See you. Bye-bye.